What are the biggest games in college football this year? Just straight up top 10 games of the year. Let me show you the direction I went because I'm going all over the place. I think Ohio State at Oregon is maybe the biggest game of the year, certainly one of the biggest games of the year. These are the top two teams at FanDuel in terms of odds to win the Big Ten. The physicality challenge for Oregon, the thing everyone's talking about. How's that high-flying offense going to fit in the ultra-rugged Big Ten? That stuff's normally overblown. Probably is here. Oregon, little cheat sheet here. Let's go ahead and start that. They may be one of the most physical teams in the Big Ten. How about that? So you've got that. You've also got the top S&P plus rated offense in Oregon facing the top S&P plus rated defense in the country in Ohio State. Autzen will be an absolute spectacle in this Week 7 matchup. And they've waited for a while up there for joining the Big Ten, but also to get one of the big boys. And they get Ohio State served up to them in their house in year one. Everyone's going to be asking those questions. It's not early in the year, though. It's in Week 7. So we've already learned a whole lot about both these teams by then. These two teams could meet once. They could meet twice. They could meet thrice. And we know how rarely we've ever used that terminology in college football scheduling because college football is not meant to be played that way. But I digress. This right here, this regular season matchup, both of them have over-under win totals of 10.5. That one's on the board. Number 2, although I didn't list these in order, why not? Let's just do it countdown style. How about Georgia at Alabama? Yeah, they play in the regular season, Week 5. Georgia as a favorite at FanDuel right now. -3.5. The Bulldogs favored in Tuscaloosa. The Georgia defensive line, probably something a lot of people will talk about this week as Kirby Smart goes to SEC Media Days and they're asking questions. They're kind of trying to poke and prod and find the first world weaknesses and vulnerabilities that Georgia may have. Well, let's just say that's the case. Let's say maybe that interior pass rush can't get home. They don't have elite guys off the edge. Maybe Alabama's offensive line finds a whole lot more success that night than you expect. And keep in mind, last time we saw them play was a few months ago in December in Atlanta, and Alabama, in Nick Saban's last SEC game, they won the SEC championship over Georgia. How does Kalen DeBoer look against Georgia, though? That's one of the most exciting things. You know, anytime you get a coach hired, you always wonder, how will he look against my rival? Well, it used to be like if you hired a new coach at Alabama, how will he do against Auburn? How will Sharon Moore do against Ohio State? But see, Alabama-Georgia has been the biggest rivalry and the most consequential rivalry in the SEC for several years now, although it's not a historic natural rivalry. So they're asking, how will Kalen DeBoer do against Kirby Smart in Georgia? And with good reason. We get to find out. Georgia's got a shot to grab it here. You know, Kirby only got one successful swing at Nick Saban. That was a big one because it was in a national title game. But he was 1-5, I believe, versus Saban. If he starts off the Kalen DeBoer era at Alabama with a win over them in their building, it's a big deal. Think about the other side of the coin. Georgia's favored in this thing for a reason in Tuscaloosa because on a neutral field, your odds maker friends there at FanDuel are telling you there may be as much as a touchdowns difference between these teams. If DeBoer comes in and grabs a win against Kirby year one, Kirby's like got the number one program in America, and you would hear a ton of sniping amongst his own fan base at him because that's life in the SEC at the University of Georgia. So I've got that one. I got one all the way in Week 11 as my number 3 game. This one kind of makes me rub my hands together a little bit. Florida State at Notre Dame is in Week 11. It's not a conference game because Notre Dame's not in a conference. However, it's later in the season. FSU, I looked at their schedule. The only other remote shot they have at playing a cold weather game may be at Duke, and that's not going to be a cold weather game. Extended forecast says highly unlikely. This could be like 30 degrees, though. I don't know. South Bend, Week 11, I don't know what to expect up there. Is this Notre Dame's toughest test in the regular season? It depends on how you view a Week 1 trip to Kyle Field to face Texas A&M. It's either that or it's this one. These are two bona fide playoff contending teams, and chances are you'll think they're playoff contenders when this day begins, and you may even think they're both playoff contenders at the conclusion of this day. One of them could emerge as more than just a playoff contender. One of them could emerge as a team you're legitimately talking about in the national championship conversation. Portal quarterbacks here. This is Week 11, mind you. It's not early in the season. So by now, week 11, we've seen DJU, we've seen Riley Leonard, and we've found out, for better or for worse, what those moves meant for these respective programs. Florida State, Notre Dame. If you don't know anything else about this year, if you just drop the alien down and you say, got a treat for you, alien, week 11, Golden Dome versus Spear Helmet, that's a great matchup. Love that. So 10.5 and 9.5, Notre Dame, FSU over-under respectively there. That's a really, really good one. Also, hey, Mike Norvell, Marcus Freeman. A lot of reasons to watch this one. I don't need to sell you much on the next two games, but my number 4 game, I'm going to Dallas, where we'll be later tonight and all this week for media days. Week 7, Red River Shootout, Sooners Longhorns. It's very funny, as we talked about several times over the summer, Oklahoma has largely owned this rivalry. Yet the perception of how the two teams stack up entering the SEC is totally inverted. Texas on top of the world, co-favorites to win the conference. Oklahoma's just kind of back here hanging out in the middle of the pack, and they got a tough schedule, and their offensive line's trash. Don't expect anything from them. All the talk's fine. Policy we have on this show, everyone's allowed to talk as much as they want to as long as you play the game, as long as the game arrives eventually. Because I was at this game last year. OU was not a point spread favorite entering that one either. And yet, at the end of the day, it was OU again finding a way. Quinn Ewers, what's he look like this year? What's he look like in this game? They turned the ball over last year. What does he look like this year? Jackson Arnold. These could be two of the best offenses in the country. And if OU's offensive line's just better than expected, think about that firepower. Think about the added dimensions it could open up for that team. Big time reason to look forward to this one every year. Also, of course, I'm putting Michigan at Ohio State in. Now, this one's way later in the year. It's week 14. It's rivalry week. I don't know what else needs to be said. We've talked about this game a lot, and we'll certainly talk about it in the future. But just thinking about the dynamic that could be setting itself up. Because certainly there's one world where Michigan tails off a little bit, and they're a 3-loss team already by the time this game happens, and Ohio State's favored by 15.5. There's another world where Michigan doesn't fall off a whole lot. Now, I don't really see a world where Ohio State falls off, so they're in it regardless. But what if it is, again, a setup where we got Big Ten championship implications, we got playoff implications, blah, 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 but it looks to be competitive. And it's not some afterthought. And you're not kind of looking at it with your middle and index finger peeled in front of your eye. You're really excited because you, as a Michigan fan, think we got a really, really good shot yet again. Just think about how that could set up and not how it feels right now. We've got an eternity until that game. But it does not matter is the point. Again, the talk does not matter because the game will arrive. Some of these big-time teams, Ohio State, Texas, for example, they don't play in the regular season. So I just have to speculate about what that would look like. We, of course, get to see Michigan, Ohio State every year. All right, now we get to the back half here, and these are some games that may not be all over the preview magazines and all over the marquee. Actually, I'd say at least 3 of these you're not going to hear a ton of folks talking about. I can't wait for Tennessee to go to Oklahoma in week 4. This is the opener of SEC play for both teams. It's the first SEC game ever for Oklahoma. It is Josh Heupel, former OU quarterback, taking his team into Norman, and you get to see the winner probably emerge in the college football playoff conversation. That's very early in the year still. It's still week 5. But this is such a pivotal stretch for Oklahoma. If they're going to make anything out of this season, they've got this game. I think they go to Auburn the very next week. And so that 2-game stretch, this is before you even get to like Texas or Alabama or anything like that. That 2-game stretch will determine whether Oklahoma's going to fight for a nice, respectable record this year or whether they could be in the conversation that they want to be in, which is SEC championship. If Tennessee wins, they've got a more manageable schedule, but they do still have Bama and Georgia left. But the thing about it is if Tennessee goes there and wins, then they've got Oklahoma. Well, they got Arkansas after that. They got Florida after that. They got Kentucky, Mississippi State, UTEP, Vandy. You would expect them to be favored in those games. My point is, you can start talking about splitting, or, although no Tennessee fan wants to talk like this, what if Tennessee wins all those other games? They're coming out of Norman. They got to win. What if they lose against Bama and Georgia? What if they're 10-2? That's a playoff resume. An SEC team going 10-2, whether you like it or not, is going to be a playoff resume. And especially if it includes wins at Oklahoma, against Florida, et cetera, et cetera. notice I did that intentionally. I've already said et cetera too much here, but I did that intentionally because there are some folks out there who don't like the term SEC schedule thrown around. I understand, and I am openly poking them in the ribs right now by saying et cetera, because they would say, no, you don't ever say a Big 12 schedule, et cetera. Name the teams. I don't have to because the committee doesn't feel that way. The committee doesn't think that way. You know it, and I know it. So Tennessee, if they get through the OU game, they're 4-0, they could probably wind up going 10-2 and have no worries that there'll be a seat at the playoff table. Week 5, the very next week, Virginia Tech at Miami is one of the games of the year for me because it, number one, answers the question of which of these two needs to be taken the most seriously in the ACC race. But before that now, what did Miami do in that Florida game in week 1? While it's not a conference game, you think about the uncomfortability that will be in the air, the toxicity that will be in the air if Mario and company go up there and lose that game versus if they go up there and win it, how much hype there'll be. And then you start looking down the schedule because this is what everyone does. You get past a big game, and then you start, okay, what's next? Who do they have next? What's their next big game? Well, with Miami, you look on their schedule after the Florida game and you say, wait a second, Virginia Tech, wasn't that sleeper team everyone's talking about? Yeah, they got Drones, the quarterback up there, really good running game, and defense is pretty good. Yeah, they play at Miami. Yeah, and it's a Friday night? Yeah, which I didn't even realize until a little while ago. If Virginia Tech wins, there is a wide open path to them being undefeated in conference play or maybe just undefeated when Clemson comes to town later in the year. We can dream. If Miami wins that thing, and that got coupled with a win against Florida in week 1, it may not shock anyone. It may not raise the eyebrows nationally because most of the nation doesn't think top 10 highly of Florida or Virginia Tech. But how much validation would that be for Mario Cristobal and his team that, hey, we're on the right track. We're winning games that we used to lose. And now we start looking ahead to, Florida State? We start looking ahead to maybe ACC championship ticket punching, maybe having some breathing room, maybe being able to lose a game and still go to Charlotte. So what kind of Miami are we talking about? What kind of Virginia Tech are we talking about? What about week 8? Georgia at Texas is one of, obviously, the premier games of the year. It's number 1 versus number 2 in the SEC. This is part of that Georgia upgraded schedule. Georgia this year, they face Clemson neutral site. They're going to Texas. They're going to Bama. They're going to Ole Miss. They got a really, a markedly different kind of schedule than they used to have. Now, here's the trade-off there. It sounds like, Georgia's got to play so many more tough opponents. They got to play Georgia as well. And so Georgia goes into Austin here. It's the same week an F1 race is in Austin, mind you. This is the week after the Oklahoma game for Texas. I challenge anyone, because this has been a fun exercise when I've been listening to how tough OU's schedule is compared to Texas's in year 1 in the SEC. Here's how you know you're grading on a little different curve. They're telling you, if you're a Texas fan, folks are out there telling you got a break. You got a soft schedule by SEC standards. And they may be right. And the thing is, you may still have one of the toughest 1-2 stretches in Red River against Oklahoma, Georgia the very next week that there is in the country. And that's playing one of the lighter schedules by SEC standards. So how about Carson Beck, too, now? Carson Beck, the favorite or co-favorite to win the Heisman right now. He's right up there. Gabriel's up there. Carson Beck's up there. If he stays healthy this year, there will be no doubt. How could anyone have questions about Carson Beck, for better or worse? Because by the time their season's over, you will have seen Carson Beck against Clemson's defense, on the road against Bama's, on the road against Texas, on the road against Ole Miss. You throw in some other teams as well. You will know everything you need to know about Carson Beck. What about week 6? Hit the rewind button a little bit. Clemson at Florida State. The only time I have been to a game at Florida State, it was back in either 15 or 16. Deshaun Watson was still at Clemson, and they went in there and they won late against FSU, 35-31, I want to say it was. Amazing atmosphere. This one will be as well. Jesse, we have a noon kickoff confirmed for this already? Is that right? They already did that for real? I did not know that. Noon kickoffs everywhere. You know, as someone who has advocated for as many noon kickoffs as possible, even I am getting close to admitting we may have a few too many big games kicking off at noon. That's how you know it's getting a little out of hand. Nevertheless, I love it, and I love this matchup. It's the top two teams odds-wise in the ACC to start the year. Clemson needs this in the worst of ways. It's a referendum game. You know, just like anyone who pays attention to the sport year-round, the book on Clemson right now is they were great, they're pretty good now, they're falling off, they won't use the portal, their roster is second rate to what it used to be, period. And then the book on FSU is they acquire talent by any means necessary and any means available to them, and they're on the come up, and they are headed to where Clemson was. That's basically the national narrative on these two programs. So the way you quiet that is you go into their building and you win. If Clemson does that, great. If they do that, they're the favorite to win the ACC. However, remember how last year started? Last year started with a loss to Duke, and they were a 2-loss team, or were they a 3-loss team even before they got out of September? It was a really weird year. Well, this is a pretty front-loaded schedule as well, because by this time, by this game, they will have already opened as a double-digit underdog against Georgia. They will have already played NC State, and NC State is very much a contender in the ACC this year. So is Clemson undefeated? Are they a 1-loss team? Are they already a 2-loss team and staring down the barrel of another season that's labeled a crushing disappointment, even though they could still win 9 games? Big-time game there, especially for Clemson. I think it's a bigger game for Clemson than it is for FSU. And week 2 is maybe, I'm trying to think, I think this may be the most premier out-of-conference game in America this year. Texas at Michigan. It's what college football should be. You should load up your conference schedule with quality teams, and then you should play at least one of these out of conference. Michigan defense, and coming off a national championship game, but with so much newness, and Sark coming in there in week 2. If you stand up against what Texas is going to throw at you offensively this year, you ought to feel really good about standing up against whatever the rest of the sport can throw at you. You'll end up playing Oregon. You'll end up playing Ohio State. But this is one here. It's kind of like the Texas-Alabama games last 2 years early in the season. It's an out-of-conference game. You got a lot that you think you know about each team. This is where you find it out. Don't have to speculate because they're going to give it to us on free television as long as you pay your package. So those are my games of the year. I put 10 of them down. Due to time constraints, I could have gone 50 deep tonight. But I'll be interested to see what you guys say about that.